Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
We have been pushing for the Board of Education to take responsibility of their workers.
Mayor Johnson is pressing the Chicago Public School Board to make a pension payment. Our Spotlight Politics team unpacks that and more.
If there isn't enough to pay what everyone is owed, the city is on the hook to pay the defined benefits.
And while CPS has its own pension issues, so does the city. WTTW News explains how we got into this mess in the first place.
If we want to have a society where everyone has the ability to thrive, everyone has to have the same access to opportunity.
And a local organization is challenging President Trump's executive orders targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And now to some of today's top stories. It's a welcome home story 9 months in the making. After an unexpected extended stay in space, 2 astronauts are back home. NASA's Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore splashed down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida early this evening. They launched into space last June on Boeing's new Starliner crew capsule, but NASA officials later decided it was too risky to return them home on the same vehicle. CTA Blue Line riders should notice increased service along the route, just as Kennedy Expressway drivers feel the impact of 2 fewer lanes. CTA says it's adding 2 extra trips each weekday and 5 to 6 extra trips on weekends to its O'Hare branch. The Forest Park branch will have 30 extra trips each weekday. Overnight, crews shut down the 2 outbound left lanes of the Kennedy to begin the next phase of construction, while the reversible or express lanes running outbound until that work is complete, close to Thanksgiving. Like the last 2 years of the work, CTA is expecting an uptick in riders who are avoiding the traffic. The new rail schedule starts April 20th. 2 new early voting locations are set to open in the southwest suburbs.
One of my top priorities is expanding voting access in all of our communities. I am deeply committed to ensuring that every eligible voter has the opportunity to make their voice heard, regardless of where they live or what language they speak.
The locations are at Bridgeview's Universal School and Lyons Township office in Countryside. The new sites are an effort to help expand voting access to the area's Muslim and Arab populations and brings the numbers of early voting locations to 55. Suburban voters could start casting early ballots yesterday ahead of the April 1st municipal elections. Music fans, can you guess this tune? All right, I couldn't either at first, but it turns out it's Boiled Peanuts by rapper and songwriter Doechii. That's the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra on the winds. The young musicians partnered with Lollapalooza this year to tease out this year's lineup, which they dropped today. Headliners include Olivia Rodrigo, Tyler the Creator, Sabrina Carpenter, A$AP Rocky, Doechii, Korn, Luke Combs, and so many more artists will take the stage for the massive 4-day music festival in Grant Park starting July 31st. Pre-sale tickets go up this Thursday. Up next, how women in trade work are pushing back on President Trump's anti-DEI orders.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jin and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
A local nonprofit supporting women in trade work is suing the Trump administration over executive orders targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Our Joanna Hernandez met up with the organization to hear how the order is impacting their work.
The shop floor buzzes with the sound of heavy machinery cutting through metal at the Chicago Women in Trades Training Center.
When we go through the program, this is a sanctuary. We learn with each other, and it's all women, and we're being taught by women, and it's really, really important.
Desiree Guzman is the lead welding program coordinator. She started in the free training program almost 7 years ago, wanting to work in the manufacturing industry.
It's so important for someone to say you absolutely can do it and help you remove those barriers.
While welding is a male-dominated field, there's a growing number of women joining the industry. The nonprofit has helped women like Guzman get there. But now programs like these are in jeopardy because of President Trump's anti-DEI executive orders.
We can't get rid of the progress. We have to build on the progress, and that's why it's so important to keep fighting.
Chicago Women in Trades is challenging Trump's executive actions on diversity, equity, and inclusion by filing a lawsuit in federal court. The group's executive director, Jayne Vellinga, says the lawsuit was necessary to support an underrepresented part of the workforce.
The executive orders seek to undo all of that progress which is not where it needs to be, and to stop this momentum cold and sort of erase all of the efforts of the past many decades to help women achieve economic equity.
The lawsuit challenges two of Trump's executive orders, ending government support of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, the orders calling DEI programs illegal and immoral discrimination.
They are in an untenable situation because they have to choose between triggering an executive order, living in fear of legal liability, or stopping their programs and terminating federal funding altogether.
The organization is being represented by a team of civil rights lawyers, including Sabrina Talukder. She says there's confusion as the orders fail to define or describe the types of DEI activities or speech that could lead organizations to lose their federal grants or contracts.
All that we are asking is that Chicago Women in Trades can keep its door open and continue doing the work that they have done for 40 years. They should not be silenced. They should not live in a state of uncertainty and fear about what they can and cannot do.
While critics argue DEI focuses on prioritizing race and gender rather than skill, Vellinga says this perspective is far from their reality.
There is a very misleading narrative going on about DEI. And I think the one thing that I feel like I need people to understand is that these are not quotas. People are not taking jobs from people. They are getting an opportunity to apply. You know, they are being recruited so that they fill out their applications, they go through the process.
Vellinga says 40% of the organization's budget relies on federal funding. Money they say goes towards programming and helping women succeed in a workforce where they represent only 5% of Illinois' construction sector. While about 70% of their participants identify as Black or Latino, the organization says its mission is to boost equity for all women.
Women in the trades, they put up with a lot. They already work in hostile work environments. They're already relegated to the least skilled jobs on the site. They already struggle to retain, to stay working. And then to say that none of this is, to have our federal government saying none of this is true. You guys have had it easy. You've taken jobs away from other people is disorienting, to say the least. It is a narrative that has no relationship to our lived experience.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Joanna Hernandez.
Shortly after a federal judge's decision to temporarily block Trump's executive orders targeting DEI programs, another decision by an appeals court lifted the block. It allows the administration to enforce its anti-DEI crackdown while lawsuits like the one by Women in Trades await the outcome of legal proceedings. Coming up, Mayor Johnson is ramping up pressure on the Chicago Board of Education. Our Spotlight Politics team is here to explain why next. Mayor Brandon Johnson is pushing Chicago Public Schools to make a pension payment. Meanwhile, the race for Cook County Board President has officially kicked off already, and a judge has ordered the city to ramp up efforts to make crosswalks more accessible. Here with all that and more is our Spotlight Politics team, Amanda Vinicky, Heather Sharon, and Nick Blumberg. Hey, everybody. So as we mentioned, Mayor Brandon Johnson putting pressure on Chicago Public Schools to cover a $175 million pension payment. Here's some of what he said this morning.
and our investments to help them contribute to the financial security of their employees. And that's something that obviously my administration is committed to supporting along the way. We're simply asking them to do their part because it's inevitably going to be their responsibility as they become a fully elected independent body.
Heather, the school board is set to make a decision on this Thursday. What's at stake here?
Well, somebody's got to make this pension payment, and the city doesn't have the money to do it, and CPS doesn't really have the money to do it. But we heard a very long presentation from Chief Financial Officer Jill Jaworski this morning that said, look, go ahead and refinance about $240 million in existing debt at a lower interest rate. You'll save some money, and that will give you enough money to do almost three things. You'll make the pension payment, you'll cover the cost as yet to be finalized Chicago Teachers Union contract, and the contract with the Principals Union that is also still outstanding. Whether the CPS board will agree to do that is very much an open question, and it cannot pass with just a simple majority. It has to be a supermajority of the 21-member board, and it's not clear that enough members sort of see this as the best option. Now, we did get a report from the board, or a consultant hired by the board, that said, look, there's no easy options here. If you cut enough to make this pension payment, it would mean furlough days for teachers and students between 10 and 11 days before the end of the school year, which would be impossible to overstate as to how disruptive that would be for Chicagoans' lives. And that seems to be pretty much a non-starter.
And for learning.
Right, for students learning, absolutely.
So, I like to say that budgeting is not rocket science. You've got three options. You can raise revenue, borrowing, or raise taxes. Can't raise taxes in the middle of a school year. That's not how all this works. Or, again, you borrow money or you make cuts. Those are the three options in front of the school board. What are they going to do? We'll know Thursday.
Yeah. Or the city takes it on, again, as something that is not, the city does not have money to do, but nonetheless, this is a little bit like a hot potato, except for like, I want the potato in the end. In this one, they're just passing back and forth, and nobody wants it, and it sets up this prolonged question. I mean, this is all just this year. Yeah. These budget problems continue into the future, and this is not going, any of those options aren't solving that right now.
And of course, the current makeup of the school board is because the mayor had such fundamental disagreement with the district CEO over financial issues like this. And, clearly the board here, now this hand-picked group of people met, along with the newly elected folks, asserting some independence perhaps. They're going to have to make a really difficult decision either way.
Right, first major test, it seems, of this brand new board, not just, new people to the board, but an entirely new way of getting to our board, obviously, because half of it's been elected, just under half. And this flashpoint, Heather, it comes at a time when Chicago Teachers Union officials are growing increasingly frustrated that it still does not have this contract with CPS settled. What are still the sticking points?
Well, money, always, right? CTU thinks that veteran teachers are underpaid, and they want increases for those teachers. They also seem to be sort of stuck on this issue of prep time for elementary school teachers. Now, if you remember all the way back in the Rahm Emanuel era, he extended the school day essentially by slashing prep periods for elementary school teachers. CTU wants that 30 minutes back. Now, they've agreed to sort of compromise on 20 minutes. The district says 10 minutes, because if you sort of give more teachers more prep time, you've got to figure out where those kids are going to go. And that would mean hiring, CTU says, more arts and music teachers, which they say would be a win for everyone involved. CPS says, sure, we agree in theory, but again, I refer you to our previous conversation about how we don't have any money. So
we don't have any money.
They would like a deal yesterday. It is unclear sort of how they're going to resolve those issues.
Yes, and it seems like this first little money issue, the aforementioned pensions, is probably something that's going to get, I don't know, figured out, but...
Well, they have to figure it out by March 30th, because the city's got to close the books on the 2024 fiscal year. So if the city's going to catch this hot potato, and it's going to have to probably dip into its reserves or move some other money around, which would require an act by the city council, which means Time's ticking.
Time's a ticking, everybody, and we know that that spring break it's coming up.
It's coming.
So, but of course, the district will still be at work even though students and teachers are not in the classroom. Nick, you've been covering the city's efforts to upgrade crosswalk accessibility for blind and low vision pedestrians. Federal judge just weighed in on those efforts. What did they say?
That's right. So this is, just one of the, long tails of this lawsuit that's been going on for many years. It was a class action suit filed on behalf of blind and low vision pedestrians against the city for essentially failing to make its signalized intersections accessible, meaning when someone comes up to them, you press a button, you hear an audio cue, and it alerts you when the walk signal is on. Otherwise, it can be a bit of a guessing game, listening for cross traffic, trying to ask someone to help you. So this is a case that the city has been fighting in court unsuccessfully. A couple of years ago, a judge ruled that the city had in fact violated federal law by not making these, meaningfully useful, these intersections meaningfully useful for folks. So now for the past year, we've been waiting on a judge's decision. The city and the attorneys for those pedestrians, they filed competing remedial plans, essentially documents outlining how long do we have to fix this problem and how many of these intersections are we going to do. The city has been ordered now. This is a preliminary order. It'll get finalized next month, but the broad outlines is that the city will have to make 70% of its intersections accessible within 10 years and the remainder within a following 5 years. But this has been, a multi-million-dollar legal battle the city has waged.
Any explanation from the city about why it's taken so long?
Well, they've been doing some of these upgrades kind of as they go. They're really going to have to pick up the pace in coming years, though. But these can be really complicated based on, is this an upgrade to an existing signal? Is this something where we're doing it, entirely brand new? Oh, and by the way, do we have the money to do these things? So, basically just 85 of the city's intersections, 2,700 of them have these accessible signals. They've been planning to do, I believe, about 40 over the course of this year, but they are going to have to really ramp that up because the judge said you need to start complying with this immediately in 2025.
Amanda, Illinois is the latest state to consider legalized mobile gambling. They've already permitted 16 casinos. What is the argument for these online platforms now?
I mean, I think first we just have to establish that people might think you need to go to Vegas to gamble, despite Chicago, of course, having its temporary casino. But it's not just the casinos. I mean, there are more video gaming terminals in Illinois than anywhere in the United States. Dotties, at restaurants, at bars, at veterans organizations. So this is already, capitalizing on what Illinois has truly depended on to solve some of its budget woes, and that is more people betting away their hard-earned cash, and then Illinois gets to take some of it, right, through taxes. So this would allow people to just gamble on their cell phones, on their tablets. You've got one right there. Maybe download a program.
I wasn't gambling. What you talking about?
Right now, that is illegal. That is not to say that it doesn't go on. So that's what backers say, that given people are doing this, there are options. We've got the World Wide Web. There are ways to do it, that Illinois should be able to tax it and get some money from what people are already doing at this point.
What are the criticisms?
Well, it's like I just said, there's already so much gambling going on that casinos and the restaurants that depend on this, the municipalities, by the way, that get a cut from all those video gaming terminals and folks that bet at them, say, hey, wait a second, you're gonna go instead to just using your phone instead of coming to our location, and it would hurt, presumably, this new Chicago casino is they're needing as many people to come as possible. So that's really the argument, competition. And also, by the way, there is a big problem with gamblers who are addicts, and that's a lot tougher to control when you have a device that's at your fingertips. Think about people who are addicted to Instagram already, right?
I also don't know.
WTTW news
Still
website.
don't know what you're talking about, Amanda. Heather, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle turning 78 on Monday, 78 years young, and celebrated by making a big announcement. What was it?
She is going to run for a 5th term as Cook County Board President. Now, this was a little bit of a surprise to, I think, most observers, because back when she ran for a 4th term, that was a surprise, because after she lost in 2019 to Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, she said, this is my last term, I'm going to retire. And now, apparently, she wants to run for a whole other term. Now, she says she has to, because the threats facing Cook County because of the Trump administration are so serious that she doesn't want to leave Cook County sort of in rookie hands, essentially. But this is going to be bad news for the people who were already jockeying behind the scenes, expecting her not to run. They're going to have to find somewhere else to fulfill
something else to run
their.
for.
What about what we're looking at on the federal level in terms of this handing on the baton? And there are leaders who say we need to be here at this crucial time, and then younger folks saying, "Hey, wait, I want to have a turn.
Right.
I'm ready." And this question of who does that baton get passed to?
Well,
when?
And especially because so many of Cook County's top leaders have been in their jobs for quite a long time. You look at Sheriff Tom Dart, you look at Treasurer Maria Pappas, certainly President
Also planning to
Preckwinkle.
stick around.
Yeah, who are still in the game. So I think they're,
Or at least run. I shouldn't declare that they're going to win.
Right, but you have to assume that there's some frustration, as you pointed out, within younger members of the Democratic Party that are looking to to make a name for themselves.
And big questions as well as to whether U.S. Senator Dick Durbin is going to make another run, or is this going to be an open seat?
Yeah. So Nick, the Illinois Prisoner Review Board being sued for negligence regarding the tragic death last year of that 11-year-old boy. Remind us what happened.
That's right. It was just about a year ago that 11-year-old Jayne Perkins was fatally stabbed. He was trying to defend his mother from his mother's ex-boyfriend, who had been released from Illinois Department of Corrections facility, and whose mother had a protective order against him that he did not honor. He'd been making threats against her. Went to their home on the north side. Also present were another of her children, a 5-year-old, and of course the victim was herself pregnant at the time. So this was just really something that, for very understandable reasons, a lot of people were up in arms about. To see that he had been granted release by the Prisoner Review Board led to the appointment of an executive director there, led to a couple of the folks who are serving on the board to step down, and calls for even broader reforms in the way this is done.
But what it did not lead to was passage of some of those reforms. There have been some changes, but a measure that would have required, for example, live streaming of hearings did not pass. That got through one chamber but got held up. That's something that the governor has said he is against. So there's still questions about how the PRB is run.
Yeah, but the suit and the suit itself, accuses folks at every level of, being negligent. Folks within IDOC, the city, the county. The Prisoner Review Board is certainly the focal point here, but a lot of other folks named in this negligence action.
All right, something to keep an eye on. We'll have to leave it there. That's Spotlight. Nick Blumberg, Heather Schroen, Amanda Vinicky. Thanks, everybody. Up next, an explainer on Chicago's pension problem, but first a look at the weather. As we mentioned earlier, Mayor Johnson today called on the Chicago School Board to reimburse the city for a pension payment the city made on behalf of CPS. The school district has pension issues. The city also has pension issues. But what exactly does that mean? How much does the city owe? And how did we get into this mess in the first place? Amanda Vinicky gets us up to speed in this edition of WTTW News Explains.
You may have heard Chicago has a pension problem to the tune of tens of billions of dollars of debt. That's money meant for city employees down the line when they reach retirement. The city's pensions are underfunded, so the fear is that those retirement benefits won't be there when workers retire. Pensions affect nearly everyone, even if you're not a public employee. Taxpayers have already been footing the bill to alleviate the pension debt. See, cities are rated on their fiscal stability, and credit ratings agencies frown on pension underfunding. If they cut the city's rating, it becomes more difficult and expensive for Chicago to borrow money. That extra cost either gets put on residents, often through higher taxes, or means less money for other city programs like schools, public safety, or filling potholes. How did it get to this point? First, you need to know how pensions work. They start out like most other retirement plans. A certain amount is taken out of a worker's paycheck. That money gets invested in an effort to grow it. But a pension is a defined benefit plan in which workers are guaranteed a certain amount upon retirement, regardless of how the investment performs. That's why Chicago needs to contribute to its 4 pension funds. If there isn't enough to pay what everyone is owed, the city is on the hook to pay the defined benefits. And right now, remember, the funds are collectively tens of billions of dollars short. So why are the city's pensions so severely underfunded? Some claim the pension benefits negotiated between the union, city, and state are overly generous and too difficult to keep up with. Also, for a long time, the city just flat out didn't contribute enough to the pension funds. Chicago was following state law, which didn't require the city to put in more. It's also a matter of math. Following the law still landed the pensions with loads of debt. Now, a new law's in place. Illinois requires the city get its pensions 90% funded within the next 30 or so years. In an effort to catch up, the city approved a new casino. Its tax revenue will go exclusively toward pension debt. Will it be enough to fix the pension funding problem? Go ahead and place your bets.
You can see more videos in our WTTW News Explains series on our website at WTTW.com/explains. And that's our show for this Tuesday night. Stay connected with our reporters and what they're working on by giving us a follow on Instagram at WTTW Chicago. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. The future of police reform amid changes at an agency tasked with investigating officer misconduct. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to give back to its community in Chicago and beyond.